everybody, JC here from Toy News International, and it's time for another T&I Pop Talk episode. And for today's episode, we're going to be announcing the winner of our $100 Big Bad Toy store credit. We ran a contest a couple months ago, started a month or so ago. Basically, you guys write in with your questions, and you'd be entered for a drawing, and we'd pick one, and that person would win a $100 store credit. So today we're going to announce the winner of that contest. And I've got some more letters with questions from you guys. So that's primarily what I'm going to be focusing on with this episode. I'm not going to really spend any time talking about any news that happened. Not a whole lot's happened in the last few weeks since the last episode. We did have Force Friday. I hope you guys, you Star Wars fans, had a successful Force Friday and found the toys that you wanted. I know basically stores really didn't get as much Star Wars product as I think many of us would have liked to have seen. I don't know if stores underestimated the demand or if, for some reason they just sent out a small supply initially, maybe to build demand. I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much if you didn't find what you were looking for on Force Friday. As we get closer to Christmas, I'm sure these toys are going to show up more and more. So, I would not resort to high prices on eBay or that kind of thing at this point, because I think you're going to see most of these, if not all of it, out in greater numbers as the weeks get closer to Christmas. So anyway, since the last episode, I read some questions, some letters we got in the P.O. box in the last episode. I've gotten one more letter in the P.O. box, a physical letter, and then I've gotten some letters with questions via my Facebook page, which I did say you could do if you didn't want to write a physical letter. So I'm going to read some of those, and then I'm going to, at the end of the video, I'm going to announce the winner of the contest. So yes, I'm going to make you watch the video, or at the very least push the fast forward button to get to the actual name of the winner. But anyway, the first letter I'm going to read comes from Shane. As I said, this is a physical letter sent into the P.O. box. And even though the contest has come to an end, if you have a question or just want to, express something about toy collecting or whatever, feel free to send it into the P.O. box. I have the P.O. box address in the description below. We love to hear from you guys, so if you want to send artwork or anything like that, feel free, even though the contest is over, we'd love to continue to hear from you guys. So this letter comes from Shane, and Shane writes in and says, "Just want to write and let you know that you're one of my favorite toy reviewers. Really appreciate it, Shane. It's always good to hear, that, when you guys say you like my videos and stuff. My first kind of response is honestly like, yeah, whatever. Mainly because I'm just so hard on myself, and it's like I'm my worst critic. So it's like I'm like, why like my videos when there's so many other great toy reviewers out there and stuff. But I really do appreciate it when you guys write in and say you like the videos and stuff, or even when you have constructive criticism. I appreciate that as well. When you write in and say I suck, that I don't appreciate so much. Anyway. You're one of my favorite toy reviewers. I constantly find myself watching reviews for things I'll probably never buy just because I find your videos to be a nice way to wind down and relax after a long day of working 2 jobs and taking care of my 1-year-old son. Kudos to you, Shane, for working your butt off and taking care of your kid. That is something to I admire. I particularly love your DC collectible reviews as one of my favorite lines, and I very much look forward to future videos focusing on them. I am also able to keep current with the latest action figures thanks to ToyNewsEye.com, which has saved me from missing out on awesome figures more than a few times. Enough rambling, I'll get on to my questions or two if that's okay. First, what is your favorite figure and why? I know you just talked about U.S. Agent being one of your favorite characters, but I'd like to know what some others are. Second, what got you into collecting? Anyway, thanks for your time and everything you do. Well, Shane, it's hard to really kind of pinpoint a specific favorite character or figure I have. I have favorite characters like Captain America, like U.S. Agent, and so I definitely like figures based on those characters. Han Solo, Bespin Han Solo, the vintage collection Han Solo figure is one of my favorite Star Wars, and look very much forward to when Hasbro gets around to doing a 6-inch Black Series version. But there's just so many great toys out there that companies have been releasing over the years. You know, my three favorite toy lines are the ones I grew up with as kids, and that's Star Wars, Transformers, and G.I. Joe, and then Marvel is my fourth. And I didn't collect Marvel figures as a little kid, but definitely as more of an adult collector, those are one of my favorite ones. And then DC collectibles. I mean, I've always been more of a Marvel fan, I would say, than DC, but I definitely have been loving what DC Collectibles has been doing in the last few years, and looking forward to what they're going to be doing in the coming years with their icons and everything. But it's just really hard to pinpoint one specific thing. You know, Masterpiece Transformers, I think, were all great. You know, I loved Hasbro's BMF Millennium Falcon toy. That is I'm not a big vehicle collector, but that is a sweet, very cool looking toy that I love having on display, even though it was very hard to find room for it. But, you know, again, there's just a ton of things out there. Now, as to what got me into collecting, well, I could probably talk hours on that. To make a long story short, basically how it works is, as a kid, as I mentioned, I played with Star Wars, Transformers, and G.I. Joe. Those were the three main toy lines I played with as a kid. And the Transformers and the G.I. Joe led me into reading comics. I started reading the Transformers miniseries that I picked up one day when at a Walgreens drugstore. I had been sick, and so my parents bought me the comics to read while I was sick, and while we were picking up a medicine prescription. And it wasn't actual, the comic had been going for a little while, but it was like these multi-packs that they sold at the drugstore, so I was able to basically pick up the first 4 issues of the Transformers comic. And so I started reading that, and then I got into the G.I. Joe comics because, again, I was into the G.I. Joe toys. And that led me into basically collecting comics. I started picking up other Marvel comics like X-Men and Spider-Man, Secret Wars 2, things like that. I started reading, you know, basically comics that I would go down to my local convenience store that I could walk to as a kid and pick up comics. Back then, you know, you could buy comics at pretty much any kind of place that sold magazines, and they weren't, you know, they cost 25 cents back then. So, you know, I'd pick up comics and started reading them, and I started collecting comics. I really got into comic books. I, you know, started bag and backboarding them. I'd hang them up on my wall. I mean, my walls would be basically wallpapered in comic books that were bagged and backboarded, of course, so they were protected. But then I would pin them up on my wall, and my parents loved that because my walls were full of pinholes and everything. But I collect, you know, I started reading and collecting the comics kind of probably about middle school time, and really all the way through college. I collected the comics. So action figures kind of fall. So I gotten out of action figures for a while, you know, after Star Wars and G.I. Joe, you know. But I kind of got back into action figures, I guess, when the Batman movie came out, the Michael Keaton Batman movie, the first one. And that got me into kind of, I picked up a few figures for that, and still have one. And this actually kind of will go towards a answer to another question coming up about one of my favorite childhood collectibles. And so this Toy Biz Michael Keaton Batman was one of the first action figures I got as a collector. And then, but I didn't collect the whole Batman line. Like, you know, there was more than just Batman released. But this one, and I think I had Joker, were the only two I got from this line. But then I started, you know, because I was a Marvel fan, I started looking at Marvel figures. So at that time, there was the Secret Wars figures from Mattel. That line had basically come to an end at this point in time. But you could still find some on the discount shelves at Toys R Us and stuff. So I picked up a few of those. And then Toy Biz then, you know, proceeded to release these new 5-inch Marvel figures. And this was really the first line that I collected. I had got all the figures in this line, the first wave and everything. And after that, and then I started collecting doubles. So I'd have one to open and one to, you know, keep on the card. Thanks to, you know, basically my parents. When I got older and was having to buy the stuff myself, I was much less buying 2 figures of the same figure. But in those early days, I would definitely, you know, I had a lot of doubles and stuff that I tried to keep in pristine condition and stuff. I still have this Captain America figure, which is one of my favorite figures. I have a loose version, and then I still have a mint on card version as well. Also, same with the repaint of the U.S. Agent that they did. So. But and after that, then I started collecting the Playmates Star Trek toys that started coming out shortly after that. That was through high school years, and it was big Star Trek fan. So that was like the first Star Trek line I ever collected, and those were a little bit on the cartoony side, but I really kind of dug them, and I love the vehicles, I love the Enterprises, and stuff. So I started collecting that, but then I went off to college and kind of, again, money came a factor, and so I kept my comic book collecting, which was not easy because I went to a small school where there wasn't a comic book store nearby, so I had to literally drive like an hour and a half to get to the nearest comic book store, which I did on a regular basis, but it wasn't easy. But the toy collecting kind of fell off for a good while there. I did when Hasbro relaunched the Star Wars line with those Power of the Force figures, those big buff Power of the Force figures. I did find a couple of those at my local Walmart and picked up like the Luke Skywalker and Boba Fett. But honestly, I thought those figures were not that good looking, so I didn't like really get super into it with that. Just picked up a couple mainly for nostalgia. And then graduated from college. Now at this point, I kind of got into college with the idea that eventually one day I wanted to open my own comic book store. Like I majored in marketing and management with the idea that one day I was going to open and manage my own store. So I always had this idea of, being a comic book collector, or comic book store owner, selling comics and action figures and stuff like that. So, at this point, I got out of college, and of course, I didn't have any money to open my own store. So I wasn't going to immediately go out of college and start running a comic book store. So I ended up getting a job doing, a real job, not real job. I mean, comic book store is a real job, but this job, not dealing with toys and comics and stuff. Basically a 9-to-5 job, which I hated, but it paid the bills and stuff. But I did start getting back into toy collecting at that time. Really with the introduction of the Star Wars Episode 1 toys. Was not going to collect those, but Star Wars Mania was at an all-time high, and I saw the toys. Walked into a mall and went into a KB Toys one day and just saw them sitting there, and it was like, I got to pick these up. So I did, and then that kind of led to more Star Wars and stuff, and really that's pretty much when I became a steady action figure collector, full force, and been collecting ever since. So that long story, short, and I know it really wasn't short, but that's basically how I got into collecting. So Shane, thanks for the question. I really appreciate it. Now I'm going to move on to a couple. Unfortunately, I don't think I can read all of these because this video would go on forever if I tried to answer all these questions. So I'll save some of these maybe for a future episode. And again, if you guys want to keep writing in with questions and stuff, we'll definitely try and get to them. So I'm going to answer just a few of them. So let's see. We'll go with we'll go with Boy Wonder, because I'm sure this is a question that might interest a lot of you out on YouTube. Boy Wonder asks, been watching your videos for several months, and after 5 years writing the Super Duper Toy Box, I wonder how some of you guys make money doing what you do. Does monetizing your YouTube channel earn that much money? Thanks. Okay, well, as far as YouTube goes, I'm probably not the biggest expert. My YouTube channel is fairly new, and I only have about, as of this video, I have just over 9,000. We just kind of broke the 9,000 mark. Yay! Thanks guys again for subscribing. Every one of you who subscribes, I really appreciate it. My goal for this year was to reach 10,000, and I think I have a good shot at doing that, by the end of December, hitting 10,000. So hopefully you'll be able to meet that goal. But am I able to retire off of the money I make off of 10,000 subscribers on YouTube? And the answer is no. I make a little money, but not a whole lot. But if you have, a couple 100,000 subscribers or more, then yes, there is the potential there to make some decent money. Now, whether you can make a sole living off of it, that probably a little bit depends on your costs of living and such. But there is potential. But when it comes down to it, and, my living is made off of the websites, which, again, it's not something that happened overnight. I've been running these websites over 15 years. I started out running them on the side while I worked a full-time job, and was able to grow them into something where I was lucky enough to be able to make a living off of. But it wasn't easy. A lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, and being self-employed. Basically, I really don't. I can never like just set it aside and like take a week's vacation from it. I even when I go on vacation, I have to take my laptop with me, so and check in on the sites and make updates and stuff like that. I mean, I have other people that do work on the sites, and those guys are great, but I still basically have to check in and do work practically every day. You never know when news is going to break. Unfortunately, and so you always have to be prepared to post news when it happens. And so it's great doing something that you love, and having being your own boss has advantages. It gives you some flexibility with schedules, but you have to be dedicated. You have to be and there's not a lot of there's not people sitting there patting you on the back saying, good job. I mean, your own boss. So, the buck stops with you basically. So there's definitely downsides, but, like I said, I've always said anything you do is going to, if you're going to be successful at it, is going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of hard work. And so my philosophy is you might as well do something you like and enjoy and do it for yourself as opposed to working long hours for somebody else. But again, you've got to be willing to put in the time, and there's not a lot of instant gratification a lot of times and stuff, and it can be discouraging. So, it's not, I don't want to make, just because, I cover something that I like, and work and stuff that I like, I don't want you to think that any of this is easy, because it's not. And the guys that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, they've worked their asses off to build those subscribers up. And they're constantly having to find ways to continue to build up subscribers and stuff. And there's a lot of stress with it too, because essentially money is made off of advertising with these things, whether it's websites, YouTube, or whatever. And you never know, especially in today's economy, when advertising dollars are going to dry up. So there's also just it's not as secure as you might think. So hope that answered your question. Like I said, basically, if you're thinking about trying to do this as some kind of living or make decent money off of it, just be prepared to do a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours, and don't expect it to happen overnight. Let's see. Let's go with one more question. Let's see. All right, we'll go with, since we touched upon this in my earlier answer about my favorite toy. Let's see. Okay, so I'm not going to butcher the first name. Fitz, who's written in several times to me, so I always appreciate hearing from him. But his question is, hi Jay, got a question. First, can international folks enter the contest? And the answer is yes. As long as Big Bad Toy Store ships to wherever you are, you can enter the contest. Out of all the toys in your collection, is there something you've owned since your childhood that takes special place over the modern stuff? In addition, love your video reviews. The 4-inch multiverse reviews pretty much sold me on picking them up. So as I touched upon earlier, these Toy Biz figures have a lot of sentimental value for me. These weren't actually like toys I had as a young kid playing with, but got these in high school, and I've had them ever since, and they have sentimental value for me, as I mentioned before. Now, that got me thinking about, things from my childhood and stuff. Now, they're not action figure specific, but I do have a couple things that I kind of have had since my childhood that I still enjoy today. So this video game, this is a little handheld. Well, it's not so little. It's pretty big for a handheld, but it's a handheld video game of Donkey Kong, put out by Coleco back in the 80s. So it's made to look like the arcade cabinet like Donkey Kong. It's certainly nowhere near, the game itself is very basic, nowhere near, well, granted, by today's standards, even the regular full-on Donkey Kong arcade game is not that advanced. But this is a much more simplified version of that arcade game. But definitely, I still enjoy it a lot. It's got 2 levels, basically. That as you do it, it gets faster and faster, but it's only got 2 levels. But these were very cool. I mean, they made others, Pac-Man, Frogger, and I think I had Pac-Man. I don't have it anymore, but I did hold on to this one and still play it. It works in perfect condition. I did lose the bottom of the battery holder thing on the bottom, but I just jury-rigged a piece of cardboard to replace that. But, you know, otherwise it works perfectly. You know, you get the little music. So this is definitely one of my favorite things from my childhood that I still have. And then this other is a book now this book is not the actual book that I owned as a kid. I lost that book, or, you know, something happened to it, I don't know, but I managed to find one online after years of searching for one. I finally found it. So this is a book, I don't know if it's canon for the Star Wars universe. It does kind of fit in with that Star Wars TV special that years and years ago that, you know, everyone says is complete crap, but I love this book. It's about Chewbacca and his little boy, but you didn't know Chewbacca had a little boy. And basically this adventure goes on, you know, in their home planet, where he goes looking for these berries and stuff. And it's got Han Solo in it, who's really my favorite character from Star Wars. And my dad got this for me when I was young, you know, around Christmas time one year. And, you know, I remember basically reading this book before Christmas a lot of times. And so it's got a lot of sentimental value to me. So, you know, like I said, I searched around for years trying to find it, you know, going to bookstores and stuff to see if anyone had it, and could never find it. But eventually I did find a copy just a couple years ago, actually, online. So I scooped it up when I saw it. So this is something that had sentimental value for me. So thanks for all your questions. Like I said, sorry I didn't get to everybody's. I just didn't want this video to drag out for like an hour, because I figured most of you wouldn't sit through that long. Also, just to update you, because some of you have asked, you know, I talked about doing Ironman training and Ironman triathlon, which at the time of this filming is just under 4 weeks away, my race. This will be my 4th one. But I've been training. This weekend was my peak week of training, which basically is my hardest week of training. So this weekend on Saturday I did a 20-mile run and a 3,500 meter swim in the pool. And then on Sunday I did a 100-mile bike ride. So that's the toughest weekend of training that you do. Now I'll start ratcheting it down bit by bit so that come race day, you know, my body's rested and everything. It's called, you know, will be one more semi-hard week this week, and then it's what's called tapering, which, like I said, basically you ratchet things down so that your body can be rested come race day. So I'm hoping to have a really good race come October 11th, and so wish me luck on that. All right, so getting on to what I'm sure most of you are waiting for, and that's the announcement of the winner. So I did send a message to the person who won, so you want to check via YouTube, so you want to check for that. But the winner is Matt, aka Mouse. That's his YouTube name. He is the winner of the contest. So I'm waiting to hear from him to claim his prize, and we'll get him hooked up. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, you know, my goal is to hit 10,000 subscribers. We just hit over 9,000 this past weekend. So we got, you know, just a little under 1,000 to go to hit 10,000. So I'm going to do another I don't know exactly what I'm going to give away yet. Maybe another Big Bad Toy Store credit. I like those because, you know, Big Bad Toy Store ships internationally, so you guys overseas can participate. It's hard to give stuff away to international folks just with the mailings and everything. But I'm going to come up with something nice once we hit with 10,000. So Basically, the quicker you guys can get me to 10,000 subscribers, then the quicker we can give something away again. So again, I appreciate all of you guys who've taken the time to write in letters. I hope you continue to do so even though the contest is over. The P.O. Box is down below. My Facebook address, if you haven't already, just send me a friend request and I'll accept it. It's a quick, easy way for me to communicate with people without doing a full news story on the site or making a video. So if you just want to follow my ramblings or whatever, hit me up on Facebook. There's a link in the description below. And as always, leave comments, let us know what you think. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and until next time, guys, I'll catch you later.